McCoy Tyner was an influential American jazz pianist who worked in the John Coltrane Quartet from 1960 to 65 and has had an extensive career as a leader after that, a career which stretched up to about 2008, and he died in 2020. And he is known for not using electric pianos or other electric instruments. Hi, my name's Dan. So this is my first encounter with McCoy Tyner that I know of, and my first encounter with this album, definitely. And I would describe this as being an album of live instrumental jazz, which is kind of, I tend to think, is the natural state of jazz, is that it's music that's intended to be played live. So we've got here basically a quartet. We've got a piano, we've got bass, we've got drums, and we've got a guy playing a couple of kinds of saxophone. Acclaimed Music describes this as spiritual jazz, one of the two names that it gives, or genres that it gives. I don't know what qualifies it as being spiritual jazz. My cynicism is that it's about the names that you give to the tracks rather than the music itself that defines it as that. I could be wrong. And if somebody knows what is the musical differences with spiritual jazz, please do leave me a comment. I'd love to learn. So something similar to the way that I found this album. The way that I listened to this album happened a few reviews ago with Albert Ayler. So my normal structure is that I listen once, do some reading, and listen again. And I normally try to make sure that I listen on different equipment in the two listenings. I've got two or three or four kind of different situations that I generally listen to the music in. One of them being the car on my commute, which is one of the main reasons I started doing reviews, was to give me something interesting to listen to on my commute. And the other was on my headphones. I've got what I think is a fairly decent pair of headphones that I use. So the first was in the car, then I did some reading, then I did the second lesson. There's a bit of an extended kind of introduction to the fact that I felt more, I heard more structure in the second listen than I did in the first listen. And I think that this is down to, well, in the headphones you get a very clear separation of the instruments, but also in the car, things that are quiet. Although I have a fairly quiet car, there is road noise and other things around, so some things at the quieter end of the spectrum can get lost in the listening, which is a bit of a shame at times. So yeah, there is some structure to it. There's a reasonable amount of structure actually in some of it. The piano tends to be very free and fast, and at times very unrelated to what the other's doing, but not all the time. Sometimes I could kind of hear the links that's going on. Maybe I'm getting better at listening to jazz. I don't know. I'm not a complete stranger to jazz, but jazz is so impenetrable at times, or some of it is. The most musically sensible bit, if you want to use that term, is the bass solo, which is at the start of the last track, which is also the bit that I enjoyed most, but I do enjoy a good bit of bass. Most of the rest of it, I'd say, is at times it is definitely quite inaccessible. And this is, again, the focus is on the piano here. It sounded a bit at times like you've got all the piano notes and you're throwing them down the flight of stairs, and they're just making that every time they hit. And there's lots and lots of these notes going on. It is actually, I can tell that there's a lot of skill to what he's doing. It's just the musical relevance of it was somewhat lost on me. I also feel like it kind of, in some ways, falls between the sofa cushions and music. So on one hand, it's too kind of bonkers to be tuneful jazz, and on the other hand, it's too sensible to be properly free jazz. So it's somewhere between the two, and yeah, I kind of like jazz that is maybe a little bit less free than this. Sometimes the stuff in the free jazz that, because of the textures used, that I like, but a lot of the time, free jazz is to me a bit of a closed book. At times, I kind of mentioned that it's particularly focused on the piano. It feels like it is McCoy, who's the one who's running around the room like a mad thing with his undies on his head, whilst the others are watching in bemusement and kind of just trying to play something fairly normal. Uh, and as I said before, there's no doubt that it's skilled. And then the last track, which starts with this bass solo, then goes on to be kind of like a rock sequence. Sounds a bit like a Joni Mitchell song to start off with, for me. But then it's kind of 20 minutes long, and there's a whole lot of going back to the kind of fairly crazy piano stuff in between. So, to kind of sum up, did I like it? Not really. I'm sorry, it wasn't really my kind of thing. I'm trying to be open to all sorts of different stuff, and but for some reason, I just didn't get this. I think it's that falling between the two extremes that made it not quite so accessible for me. So, yeah, not a great fan. So that's what I think. As always, I want to ask you what you think of this album. So please do tell me by leaving me a comment down there in the comments box. And that's it from me for now.